Welcome to this week's xConnect Northwest, connecting you to the experts. I'm your host, Greg Mills, and today we're joined by Anna King. She's a reporter for the Northwest News Network. She covers the Mid-Columbia region, and she joins us today live from our studios in Richland. First of all, thanks a lot for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Now, before we get going, a reminder that you at home, you can chime in at any time with your questions. You can connect with us on Twitter at NWPTV. Use the hashtag xConnectNW. On Facebook, search for Northwest Public Television, or by email at kwsutv@wsu.edu. So Anna King is with us today, and what started as 4 separate lightning-caused fires on July 14th of 2014 in north central Washington quickly became the largest wildfire in Washington state history. The Carlton complex fire consumed over 256,000 acres. That's over 350 homes as well, and displaced numerous families in several towns. Anna, thanks again for joining us and for helping us out. Today, we're trying to dive into a few different questions about the scope of property damage, jobs, livestock, businesses in the aftermath of the Carlton complex fire. Can you paint us a picture of what that region went through?
Yeah, it was dramatic. The fire started in mid-July, and a few days after it had begun from a lightning strike, it just blew up, and multiple fires were running together down hills, which is very unusual for wildfires, but the wind was driving this fire. And so within minutes, whole hillsides were disappearing and under this blanket of flame and thick smoke. And the Methow Valley is kind of a series of these geologic formations of these ice-formed hills, glacier-formed hills. And so as the fire raged down both sides of valleys sometimes, residents were just terrified and trying to make sense of where to go, how to get out of the way of the fire, trying to save their livestock, trying to save their homes and their valuables. And it was just very dramatic. The area burned is actually 3 times larger than the city of Seattle, about 3 times nearly. And so it's just a huge swath of Washington's property and forest land.
Now, granted, we're not talking about an area of the state of Washington that is highly populated like the city of Seattle, but we are talking about, as I mentioned in the open, 350 plus homes were destroyed, and that's a lot of people displaced, even for those whose homes maybe weren't completely displaced. So we're talking about a tremendous number of people. Can you give me a little idea about what initially happened as far as help arriving and how they dealt with it in the immediate aftermath of the fire?
Well, immediately after, of course, they had government, Forest Service, and DNR firefighters on the scene trying to help contain the flames. And as the fire grew, more and more forces were dispatched to the area to kind of put some muscle on the fire. But as I was told by residents and by firefighters and aid workers, it just happened so quickly that all of these agencies were just trying to scramble and get the information dialed into one central location. They sent up an incident command post and where they tried to make sure that all the information coming from the fire was funneled into one area. But getting a handle on this many acres and this huge of a front of the fire was just a huge task. And it ended up being one of the largest fires in Washington state history. In fact, the largest fire in recorded history in Washington state. And it was just an immense task. And still, right now, people might think that the fire is over or the mudslides are over and everyone's back to normal up there. They are really struggling and trying to put their pieces back together up there. There has been a lot of donations and money that has gone up there, but they are still just trying to put up basic things like fence lines for cattle, fence lines for orchards to keep the deer out, getting homes rebuilt. And during the winter months, they won't really be able to rebuild homes. They'll have to wait for the spring.
Now, in the wake of the scope of this fire and the devastation, FEMA denied an original request for individual financial assistance to those affected by the fire. And back in September, Governor Inslee asked for more recovery assistance. What federal help have we received? And is there some precedent set for individual assistance qualification that somehow set the reason that we didn't get any initially?
I think the problem with this fire, as far as aid from the federal standpoint, is just that the fire covered such a large area, but the population density is not as great as if this fire had happened right in the center of Wenatchee, or if it had happened on the border of King County. There just wasn't the population there. And so even though these folks are really hurting and their roads are destroyed, their power poles are gone, their fence lines are gone, the dramatic amount of aid just isn't there for the federal threshold to say, okay, we're going to come in and help. And the area is so large that, like, if the federal government was to give aid, where would it go? How would it be separated out? Those are some of the questions. And so there has been federal assistance for roads, state assistance for roads, state assistance for tourism, rehabilitation in the town of Twisp and other tourist-based towns. But the overall aid is just lacking. There has been $800,000 of private aid that has come to the communities of the Methow Valley, but it's just not enough to cover this broad, huge region and to replace 350 homes that have been burnt down, half of which are uninsured.
So with that in mind, and as we head into the winter months, what really is the outlook for those who were knocked out of their homes, possibly forever? You know, what is the outlook for those people who are now looking maybe for a place to live, or at the very least, looking for a place to get restarted?
Well, the Red Cross will dole out its last assistance on December 1st. And so those will be the last Red Cross checks to be cut. And then it's really up to the residents and the nonprofits in the community right there to help the people get through the winter. What I've learned from one of my sources, Adrian Moore, with the Twisp nonprofit called Room One, is that they know after disasters, after major calamity, that people have more trouble with things like domestic violence, family discord, financial stress, and they expect that to go up. But the Methow Valley is not an easy place to live, even in the winter, in a normal year. And they know that family discord, domestic violence, financial stress happens in the winter anyways for the Methow residents. And so both of those marrying together are really going to create a kind of a tidal wave of need during this winter, and that they're going to have to kind of go through. So if they are able to get through this winter, I think in the springtime they'll have a little bit more hope. But right now it's a very tough time, and they're just trying to get ready for winter. Things like winterizing homes, getting ready for building fences around orchards so the deer don't destroy the orchards. These are things that they're trying to get ready for. So Adrian Moore, I'd like to play a piece of tape that I collected last week from her.
So if we're talking about
issues that are already or were before the fire already present, family discord or mental illness or low-level domestic violence or whatever it is that people are facing, it's going to be exacerbated.
So Anna, obviously we're talking about weather being a problem. Obviously, as we head into these winter months, what's being done to make sure that there aren't any more of these mudslides happening, and what can they do? I suppose there probably isn't a whole lot that they can do, but just wait and find out how bad things are. But I know you've spoken with a lot of people on the ground and in these towns. So, what do you think about the mudslides and anything that they can do to help?
Well, Greg, basically everyone is worried about these mudslides. In fact, a funny story is I was on my way up to the Methow Valley in the end of August to try and do some recovery stories, to do some aftermath stories, to see how people were putting things back together. And the very same night that I was there, it happened that major mud flows came down in several directions outside of Twisp. I was actually on a road trying to get back to Twisp, and it was flash flooding. And to see the struggle of these people who had already had this major fire calamity in their lives, and then to have, on top of that, a flash flooding, roads and major highways taken away, washed out, it was really dramatic. Craig Nelson with the Methow Valley Conservancy Group I spoke to just last week, and he said, they are expecting more mud flows to occur in this area. And in fact, they're reseeding with bunch grass, native seed grass, to try and mitigate the effects of mudslides that are expected maybe with the snow melt in the spring. They're going over 10,000 acres with this very expensive seed by airplane, taking them on the very steepest slopes so that they can try and stop these mudslides from taking down hillsides above highways, above homes, above residences, and even towns. I'd like to play a little piece of tape from Craig that I collected last week.
Wait around for government assistance. The biggest thing is just be kind of a heads-up homeowner. Watch for things like rain events. If you're concerned, get to high ground.
Now, Anna, we were looking at a picture at a couple of different spots in there with a gentleman holding a fish that was sticking up out of the mud. There have to be some pretty harsh ecological problems that have to be underway as far as helping those as well, huh?
Yeah, I went up into some of these valleys the morning after the mudslides. And a funny story there, when I was up there in the Methow Valley, I got to places that other reporters couldn't get to because I had a pickup truck and I knew the finger wave. And so when you're holding the steering wheel, you give a finger wave and people know you're from the area and they let you go by the road stops and everywhere. And so I just went up into some of these devastated valleys and tried to see what was going on, how the residents were coping. They went up into these areas and there were fish with their heads stuck in the ground. This marijuana farmer was just looking at all the devastation to his marijuana grow that he had. Fences were torn apart. Some of the plants were knocked over, and there were greenhouses that were built up with mud a couple feet on the side. But he was thankful that his entire crop hadn't been destroyed in that one picture that you had been looking at.
Sure. And just very quickly, we just have about a minute left to talk with you. Do you think we're going to see more fires on the scale of the Carlton complex fire in the future?
I have been on several environmental fellowships just on this subject in the last few years, and the experts are telling me that they think this is going to become the norm, that we're going to see larger and larger fires across private ground and government land that we're trying to fight. They could cross state lines. This is really going to be the future of firefighting in the West. And, it's due to things like the beetles that eat the trees, or also the way that we're managing our forests, the way that we're not letting enough of the young trees die off or be burned out and the larger trees surviving. As those forests infill with smaller brush and smaller trees so that we don't have more often fires that are taking these things out, we will have bigger, larger fires that are able to climb from the ground all the way to the treetops.
Well, thank you so much. I really feel like we really just hit the tip of the iceberg. I hope we have an opportunity to speak with you more. And thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much. And if anyone's interested in helping, they can contact the nonprofits up in the Methow Valley. They're really eager to have some more work parties and help folks out up there.
Great. Thanks, Anna. Well, remember, you can stay connected with us by tweeting us on Facebook, add us to your circle on Google+, or by emailing us at kwsutv@wsu.edu. Send us your show ideas, too. We'd love to hear from you. If you missed any part of today's show, don't worry. It'll be available online at nwptv.org. Next time on xConnect Northwest, we'll talk about some alternatives for the holiday table with WSU Executive Chef Jamie Callison. That'll be live from our Pullman studios. And if you have questions for him, feel free to connect with us online. Thanks. I'm Greg Mills. Thanks for watching.